Welcome, I'm Ananya Datta and you're watching Race to Power. Here's what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. There's a crucial Democrats meeting going to take place in minutes from now, and this could have a bearing on President Joe Biden's candidacy for re-election. Stay tuned to find out how. France has produced the most fragmented parliament in its modern history. So if you are a businessman, investor, or just a common man, should you worry about your money? We will decode if France's political uncertainty will find its way into its economy. It is a make or break day for Joe Biden, with a critical meeting of Democrat senators expected to begin shortly. And this is the first meeting after the US president's debate performance that triggered serious questions on his ability to shoulder a re-election bid. The meeting comes amid growing concerns within the blue camp and several Democrat representatives calling for Biden to be replaced with another candidate over questions on his health and mental acuity to continue. However, the 81-year-old slammed his critics within the party and challenged them to take him on at the party's national convention in August. During a phone interview on Monday, Biden dismissed the concerns of some fellow Democrats, saying, and I'm quoting, "The bottom line is that I'm not going anywhere." And it seems that his political rival Donald Trump also agrees with the incumbent leader. Trump, in a separate interview, said that Biden would refuse to quit the presidential campaign. The Republican leader pointed out that the president had secured the Democratic nomination because of all the convention delegates he won the backing of during the Democratic primaries held this year. Amid growing concerns and media reports on Biden's health, the White House also issued a press statement on Monday to dismiss claims that Joe Biden was seeking treatment for Parkinson's.
If it's not in the medical report, obviously it's not something that the president is dealing with. Well, I can tell you this. Just going back to Parkinson's for a little bit, so to give you some answers here, has the president been treated for Parkinson's? No. Is he being treated for Parkinson's? No, he's not. Is he taking medication for Parkinson's? No. So those are the things that I can give you full-blown answers on. But I'm not going to confirm a specialist, any specialist that comes to the White House out of privacy.
Now, the White House statement followed media reports that surfaced last week, claiming that a doctor specializing in the illness had paid visit to the White House at least 8 times over the past year. Now, to understand this development further, we spoke to Peter Kuznick. He's a professor of history and director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University. This is what he had to say.
The next 24 to 48 hours will be crucial. Right now, the pressure is mounting, but it's behind closed doors. So we don't know exactly what is being said. There's an important meeting going on right now among congressional Democrats. And we know that many people are going to be making the case for Biden to step down, arguing that Biden will not defeat Trump, that if Trump gets power, that'll be an existential threat to American democracy, and that the Democrats need a much stronger candidate. There's a lot of concern also among Democratic candidates lower down, local elections, House elections, Senate elections, that if Biden's on the top of the ticket, that turnout is going to be depressed and that they're going to also lose. And so the Democrats fear a bloodbath in the upcoming election if Biden remains at the top of the ticket. But Biden is in control, and he seems to be fiercely resisting all the pressure to step aside. In fact, some of the things he's saying seem to be almost delusional about the support that he has, about how strong the candidate he is, about his chances for winning in November. And so we see the polling, and approximately, or more than 3/4 of the American people say that he's too old, and mostly younger Americans are really disappointed, not only with his age and mental acuity, but also with his policy toward Gaza and many also with his policy about Ukraine. And so this is a very, very serious moment for the American public.
And for the latest, our correspondent Susan Tehrani is joining us live from New York. Susan, good to see you. What is the latest you're hearing from the Democratic senators' meeting that is about to take place?
The Democrats are scheduled to have a meeting during the lunch. President Biden, of course, is not going to be present during that meeting. And then you had congressional Democrats meeting in the morning as well. We heard GOP leaders also have a press conference just a few minutes ago. Of course, while they're acknowledging the fact that President Biden does have issues with mental acuity and he's not fit to run, it appears that the Republicans would welcome having Biden as a contender against former President Donald Trump. They'd probably even prefer to have Vice President Kamala Harris as well, considering the fact that she's less popular than the incumbent. Nonetheless, as our guest mentioned, President Biden is in charge. Some might say the First Lady Joe Biden is in charge, and Hunter Biden seems to be playing an unofficial White House chief of staff, pushing his father to continue running. But nonetheless, here we are right now. It's going to be very hard to replace President Biden if he doesn't want to himself. Time is running out as well. The convention is coming up.
Absolutely. And we're sitting here about 4 months from the presidential elections. Thank you so much for joining us on WION, Susan, and getting us all those updates.
That's right.
All right, as Joe Biden faces trouble within his own party, there is another battle raging on the campaign front. And this one has been mounted by Donald Trump's allies. A deep pocket super PAC or political action committee is spending a whopping 61 million on television and digital ads to mount an attack on the US president. The ads are expected to be aired a week after the Republican National Convention and will run till first week of September. Interestingly, the negative ad campaign that will be aired in 3 critical battleground states, that's Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And as per reports, the timing of these ads were made to coincide with issues between Joe Biden and the Democrats dominating headlines, as several leaders in the blue camp want the incumbent leader to step aside and make room for another presidential candidate. On the other hand, Biden's campaign and the representatives who back him have been pulling out all stops to do damage control for the 81-year-old. Biden's campaign is looking to spend $50 million more on advertisements in July to get the Democrat leader back on track. This is in addition to the $50 million already spent on ad buys in June. This takes the total amount spent on ad buys to over $1 billion in just a matter of 2 months.
I came to say devotion to one another.
Let's shift focus now and look at the political gridlock in France and what that means to the markets. French stocks fell as investors assessed risks from political gridlock following legislative elections that produced a divided parliament with no clear majority. The CAC 40 ended Monday's session 0.6% lower, reversing course after climbing as much as 0.9%. The French equity benchmark remains 4.5% lower since the snap election was announced on June 9th, having clawed back less than half of its losses. The Stoxx Europe 600 was little changed on Monday as gains across insurance and travel sectors were curbed by weakness in commodity stocks. The far-right National Rally's inability to implement their intentions to privatize France's state TV and radio firms led to a rise in French media stocks. A senior European economist at Schroders said, and I'm quoting, "The result was a big shock. I don't really believe that the market has fully understood what the results mean." Then he added, "It's still a very uncertain period going forward." The new Popular Front Alliance, which includes the far left France Unbowed, won the biggest number of seats in Sunday's final round of voting, but fell well short of the 289 required for a parliamentary majority. Two Bloomberg intelligence strategists said that the bloc's fiscal expansion program is the most anti-market among the parties and could weigh on all companies with large labour exposures in France. The political gridlock may impact bankers who own a large amount of sovereign debt. Additionally, the left has floated the idea of increasing taxes on wealth, profits and share purchases, as well as the statutory capital buffers and transaction taxes that banks are required to hold. Just on Monday, a day after elections, remember, their stock prices dropped as well. And to get us more perspective, we are being joined by Scott Lucas. He's a professor of international politics at Clinton Institute, University College Dublin. Mr. Lucas, thank you so much for joining us here on WION. Good to see you. What do you think? Will the political uncertainty reach France's economy?
Certainly, we will see short-term uncertainty in the French economic system. I mean, that happens in any country where you have an inconclusive political result and where you don't have an idea of the future leadership. What I think accentuates this in the French case is that we not only in what you're calling gridlock between three different factions, which is the governing faction of Emmanuel Macron, the hard-right faction of the National Rally, and this broad left-wing coalition. It's that within the left-wing coalition, which got the largest share of seats in the assembly, there are actually four different parties. You go all the way from what you might call the center left, from the socialist and from the Greens, all the way to the hard left of France Unbowed and the communist. Now, that's a wide range of economic policy that you're talking about. Obviously, the Greens would want to pursue environmental measures, and the center left would want to pursue an increase in welfare. But it's the hard left that wants to go even further, and that's what's causing the uncertainty at this point.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, we know that the Parliament of France currently looks extremely fragmented. We don't know who the Prime Minister will be. When it comes to consensus in Parliament, are you worried?
At the end of the day, governments keep everything going, even in the midst of uncertainty. Belgium, France's neighbor, I think went more than a year, possibly more than 2 years without a government. And it was simply the agencies that continued to implement economic and social policy. Netherlands just had several months without a government. After their latest elections, they finally established a coalition within the past couple of weeks. So it's not uncommon, or at least not unprecedented, to have months without a clear ruling government in power, as long as you have caretaker agencies that function. And of course, France does have a president. Emmanuel Macron stays in power. Then I don't think you're going to see collapse. But what I do think you're going to have is an inability to plan for the medium to long term while you don't have a clear idea of who the next government is.
All right, Mr. Lucas, thank you so much for joining us here on WION and getting us your insights.
Thank you.
Now, after a disastrous outing in the UK general elections, the Conservative Party went back to the drawing board and have chalked out an interim shadow cabinet. The new cabinet, however, does not feature former Prime Minister David Cameron, who has tendered his resignation to the new opposition leader, Rishi Sunak. Cameron, who served as the Foreign Secretary in Sunak's cabinet, took to his social media account saying that the Conservative Party in opposition will have to shadow the new Foreign Secretary from the Commons. He added that it's been a huge honour to serve as Foreign Secretary and will continue to support the Tories. Meanwhile, Deputy Foreign Secretary Andrew Mitchell will take over as the new shadow Foreign Secretary. Following Cameron's departure, Richard Holden too resigned as the party chair after Tories' poor show in the recent elections. The new party chair will be taken over by Richard Fuller. Further, Jeremy Hunt and James Cleverly will continue as shadow councillors and shadow Home Secretary. Similarly, Oliver Dowden will remain as deputy leader of opposition. And on the other hand, James Cartledge has been appointed as the new Shadow Defence Secretary, while E.D. Arger took over as the Shadow Secretary of Justice. Andrew Griffith will be put in charge of Science, Innovation and Technology. Former Policing Minister Chris Phillip has been appointed as Shadow Commons Leader, and other portfolios like Education and Transport will be taken over by Damien Hines and Helen Watley. Meanwhile, Victoria Atkins and Steve Barclay will continue to handle health and environment portfolios. Until further announcement, Rishi Sunak will continue as the leader of the opposition. However, his allies believe that Sunak may not last beyond the summer. This means that chances are that the Tories might have to appoint a new interim leader.
To the country, I would like to say first and foremost, I am sorry. I have given this job my all.
With every cabinet meeting, the divide becomes more and more prominent in Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition is hanging by a thread, and in the weekend's cabinet debate, that thread was almost pulled. The topic of discussion was boosting the Israel Defense Forces manpower, but it quickly derailed and ended up in the thick of politics. The Prime Minister accused the Defense Secretary of playing politics. Netanyahu is looking for support for his ultra-Orthodox conscription bill, the details of which we will come to in a minute. But Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says that he will only support the bill if there is broad consensus across the Knesset. Remember, just last month, Gallant was the only member of the coalition to vote against the bill. He had then called the bill petty politics at the expense of the Israeli military. Let's tell you a little about this contentious bill. The bill was originally put forward by Benny Gantz back in 2022 under the previous government. Gantz himself is against the bill now. In May, the Prime Minister put forward the bill, and within a month, the Parliament voted to revive it. The bill demands to end exemption on military conscription for some ultra-Orthodox religious students. Rather, slowly ramp up their conscription, but also lower the age of exemption from mandatory military service for them from 26 to 21. Now, this clause limits the men that could be called up to serve. Netanyahu's coalition includes two ultra-Orthodox parties for whom military exemptions are paramount. But the far-right religious parties have come to consensus, and experts say lowering the exemption age has softened the pitch. The debate over conscription holds significance in the contemporary climate. Israel is fighting an open-ended war in Gaza, and another war is brewing on the Lebanese border with the Hezbollah. Now, correspondent Jody Cohen has more on this from Renana.
Right, so there was reportedly a debate in a cabinet meeting over legislation on enlisting the ultra-Orthodox students into the army. Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly accused Defence Minister Gallant of playing politics by refusing to support the legislation unless it achieved a broad consensus. And in leaked comments in Israeli media, Communications Minister Shlomo Karhi reportedly suggested that Gallant's position would lead to the collapse of the coalition. Now, Defence Minister Gallant has accused Prime Minister Netanyahu of trying to link the legislation to the cabinet approving a hostage truce deal with Hamas. And Gallant suggested that that's for political reasons and called it irresponsible. Meanwhile, ultra-nationalist party head Ben Gvir has reportedly said that he won't support other legislation unless he's given a space on the disbanded war cabinet. And the Shas party has accused Ben Gvir of trying to bring down the coalition. Now, the parties have all seen the polls which suggest that the opposition would win if an election was held today, so it remains to be seen if the coalition can work through their differences.
Let's now take a look at what else is making news in the political world. UK's new Prime Minister Keir Starmer hosted his first roundtable discussion with regional English mayor earlier in the day. At the meeting, the Labour Party leader assured the regional leaders of his commitment to devolution and also proposed to establish a formal council for regions and nations, as Starmer looks to decentralise and assign more decision-making power to representatives closer to their respective constituencies and communities.
Skin in the game, those that know their communities make much better decisions.
Days after Iran elected a moderate president and reformist lawmaker Masoud Pezeshkian, the United States has responded to the development, saying that it does not expect policy changes from Iran. At a briefing on Monday, the State Department spokesperson downplayed chances to resume dialogue between the two nations. He further said that despite a new president in the picture, Washington expects Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei to call the shots in Iran. And with that, we are wrapping up this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching with me, Ananya Datta.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Namaste. Hello friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at yoursarthi@such.org.in.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at wion.com.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with